Good day, welcome to the continuation of our stockholders equities discussion. So for today, we're about to discuss on this PowerPoint presentation, the conversion of preference shares into ordinary shares as well as share split. First part of this discussion is all about the conversion of preference shares into ordinary shares. So previously in our first part of the stockholders equities discussion, we have mentioned already about convertible preference shares. So convertible preference shares are those shares that can be converted into ordinary shares at the option of the holder. This type of preference share capital can be sold at a higher price but at a lower dividend rate because of its conversion privilege. The accounting of conversion of preference shares into ordinary shares is similar to retirement of a share capital. The account balances related to the preference shares converted are cancelled, and the issuance of ordinary shares is recorded. So we are about to compare in this particular situation on the conversion how much is the carrying value of a preference share. So when we talk about the carrying value of the preference share, how much is the related preference share capital plus any share premium related to those shares to be converted, and we are about to compare that to the par value or the stated value of the ordinary share. So this convertible preference share is only the share that can be converted to an ordinary share. So previously we have discussed about cumulative, non-cumulative, participating, non-participating. Now, if they don't have the characteristic of being convertible, then we are not going to talk about anymore about this conversion. Okay, but since we're talking about conversion, so let's assume that those shares are convertible. Now, we need, as mentioned a while ago, the carrying value as well as the par value of the ordinary share to be converted. Now, in this case, if the carrying value of the preference shares being converted is higher than the par value or the stated value of the ordinary shares, then the difference will be charged now to paid-in capital from conversion of preference shares into ordinary shares. So we will not recognize any gain. Okay? And also, if the carrying value of the preference share is converted at a lower than the par value of the ordinary shares, then the difference will now be charged to retained earnings. So we will not also recognize a loss because it's not a P&L account that we are going to charge, but rather we are to credit or to debit it on retained earnings. So that's the theoretical process about the conversion of preference shares. Now let's talk about the examples. Let's take a look to Fishbowl Company's shareholders equity section, which contains the following as our example for this convertible preference shares. Okay, so we have, as you can see, you have the ordinary share capital, ordinary share premium, a preference share capital. Okay, yung 10% na nakalagay dyan, that's actually the preferential rate. We will use that in terms of dividends on the next presentation. Okay, so you can see it's indicated here that it's convertible. Then we have preference share premium as well as the retained earnings. No? So on April 13, 2020, no, 100 preference shares were converted into an ordinary share. So let's try to look ano yung mangyayari and what will be the related entries, no, in terms of conversion. So remember our theoretical discussion a while ago on the previous slide, no, we need to compare the carrying value of the preference share as well as yung ating what par value of the ordinary share. So please remember that 10 peso par yung ordinary share capital natin. Samantalang sa preference share premium, so we have 50,000 and 5,000 na preference share premium and preference share capital. So we will use them in our computations. So for our example about convertible preference shares, we will have two scenarios in this presentation. Okay, so our first scenario will be two ordinary shares were issued for every preference shares. So kanina in the previous slide, if you remembered, 100 shares of preference shares will be converted into ordinary share. Okay? Kung naalala nyo rin kanina, in totality, 500 shares lang yung meron tayo as preference shares, okay? With a par value of 10 peso. So ngayon, once we convert it based on the scenario, no? So yung 100 na i-convert mo na preference share, since sabi dito magiging 2 yung per share. So from 100 preference share, magiging 200 ordinary share siya mamaya. Okay? So just like what had happened in the retirement, dahil i-convert na natin ngayon yung preference shares, tatanggalin na natin yung related na preference share capital as well as preference share premium related doon sa 100 share. Okay? So kaya yung presented na entry dito will be, so debit tayo ng preference share capital which should be the par. So 100 pa rin kasi 100 lang i-convert natin na preference shares times the 10 peso par value kanina. Okay, so we will debit 1,000 peso. And then, we will be debiting preference share premium. Okay, which is 100 peso. So now, saan nakuha yung 100 peso? So remember kanina sa previous slide then, the premium is a total of 5,000 peso for the preference share. Now, if we divide it with the 500 shares ng preference share na meron, then we will get that for every share ng preference, meron tayong 1 peso premium. So yung related na 1 peso premium on that 100 shares to be converted, tatanggalin na rin natin. Okay, kaya 1 yung multiplied natin doon sa 100 share, kaya naging 100 peso. Okay? Tapos ngayon, what had happened, kung mapapansin ninyo, mas mataas yung nasa debit, okay? Or mas mataas yung magiging credit supposed to be. Bakit? Kasi yung ordinary share capital na 100 share, sabi ko kanina, di ba, 100 share siya, tapos magiging dalawa, so 200 na yung ordinary shares, multiplied natin with the par value na 10 peso. Yeah, you got it right, 10 peso rin yung par value ng ordinary share per previous slide. So, naging 2,000. Now, mas mataas yung par value kesa doon sa carrying value. Kung naalala niyo yung theoretical discussion, pag mas mataas yung par value ng ordinary share compared with the carrying value of the preference shares, then we will be charging it to retained earnings. Kaya ngayon, nag-debit tayo ng retained earnings at 900 peso. So this is now our entry related to the conversion of 1 preference share into 2 ordinary shares. So in our second scenario naman, 1 ordinary share per preference share ang magiging conversion. Okay? So just like what had happened in scenario 1, so we need to cancel out the preference share related items. Kaya dinebit din natin kung ano yung na-debit kanina na preference share capital na 1,000 at saka preference share premium na 100. Ngayon, no, nung kinonvert siya sa ordinary share, we have only 100 share kasi nga 1 preference to 1 ordinary share. Unlike kanina, 1 preference going to 2 ordinary share, kaya naging 200 yung kanina sa previous slide. Ngayon, 100 lang. Then we multiply it with the 10 peso par ng ordinary, kaya naging 1,000. Then the excess will now be credited to a premium or paid in capital account. No? So I use here ordinary share premium na 100. Now, in this particular scenario, makikita mo na halos parehas lang yung nasa debit at sa credit amounts. Yan, nagkataon lang siya kasi nga dun sa par, dun sa number of shares, but technically in some other cases, hindi ganyan yung magiging saktong amount. So magkakaroon ng variation depending upon the problem. So what I suggest, kapag kayo ay nagsagot na ng mga problems about convertible preference shares, converting into ordinary shares, make sure that you try entries. Try the entries, no? Put the entries so that you can answer correctly yung ating particular question. Kasi hindi natin sure na ganito ba talaga siya per scenario na present ko sa inyo. Maybe there will be other circumstances. Basta tandaan nyo lang yung theoretical discussion kanina wherein if the carrying value of the preference share is greater than the par value, then you will charge it to a premium account or additional paid-in account. Okay? Is that clear? So that is the entry. Now, in addition, no, naglagay lang ako ng note that just like retirement of share capital and acquisition of treasury shares, no gain or loss is recognized on the conversion of preference shares into ordinary shares. So napansin niyo, whether scenario 1 or scenario 2, walang lumabas na P&L account, gain or loss account. No, it's either you charge it to retained earnings or on the premium account. So we're now down to the last part of this share stockholders equities part this discussion. So it's all about share split and reverse share split. So when the market price of the shares is high and the corporation feels that a lower price will result in a wider distribution of ownership, it may authorize the replacement of outstanding shares by larger number of shares. The increase in the number of shares outstanding in the manner is called a share split, okay, or share split up. On the other hand, okay, it may also reduce, no, or reverse the procedure. Okay, in this particular scenario, the replacement of shares naman by a smaller number of shares, which is known as a reverse shares split, okay, or split down. Now, particular na itong share split or reverse share split can be recorded using memorandum entry method, okay, or memorandum entry lang, okay. Now, in this particular scenario as well, no, a share split or even the reverse share split may affect the number of share issued. Okay? Ano ba yung number of share issued? So ito yung mga nabenta natin. Remember in the first part of our discussion of shareholders equity, no? We have sold shares. So yung amount ng shares na nabenta, that's also known as issued shares. Now, outstanding shares naman, on the other hand, are those shares that are on the hand of the stockholders. Okay? So technically, ang outstanding shares, okay, pwede siyang equivalent din or equal sa issued shares. But in some other scenarios, no, meron tayong treasury shares. As you remember, treasury shares are those shares that was being reacquired by either by purchase o kaya naman by donation. That was discussed already in the part 2 of this particular shareholders equity series discussion. Okay? So yung outstanding, kung babalikan ko lang, no, nasabi ko kanina, na pwede siya mag-equal sa issued. But if there are treasury shares, outstanding is equal sa issued shares less the treasury shares. So everything on that case, no, itong mga shares na to, will be affected by what we so-called share split or even reverse share split. So on our next slide, we are about to discuss an example of a share split. Remember, ang share split, tataas yung number of shares. Okay? But technically, kung tataas man yung number of shares, okay, mababago yung par value ng ating share, no? Bakit? Sir, bakit kailangan mabago rin yung par? Kasi that's the effect of the share split, no? Kapag share split or even reverse share split, tataas or bababa yung number of shares, but the equivalent par value as well will also increase or decrease depending upon the situation. Kasi ang effect ng share split is that it will never affect the totality of the stockholders' equity. Walang mababago sa mga total amounts ng stockholders' equity. Hindi gagalaw yung amount ng share capital, hindi gagalaw yung amount ng share premium. It will stay the same or even the retained earnings. Ang magbabago lang is yung number of shares at saka yung par value. To show you the effect ng share split at saka reverse share split dun sa discussion kanina, no, na tataas or bababa yung number of shares o kaya naman even pati yung par, bababa or tataas. Okay, so we have two scenarios here. So unahin ko muna yung first bullet. Okay, so currently the corporation has 10,000 issued and outstanding ordinary shares with 10 peso par. The company effected 2-for-1 share split. So doon sa 2-for-1 natin kukunin yung scenario natin. Okay, bakit? Kasi nga, okay, dalawang bago para sa isang luma. Parang ganun yung kung i-interpret natin yan. Pero technically, hindi ko sinasabi na mababago yung share, but rather it will just simply be a split, no? So from one share, magiging dalawang share siya. So usually ang mga ginagawa ng mga students to memorize it, no, yung unang number na binigay, that's referring to the new one. Tapos yung second number, no, that will represent yung ano naman, dati. So, dalawang bago sa isang luma. Yun yung nabanggit ko kanina sa inyo, okay? So, in the table below, it will show us now the effect of this share split, okay? Share split siya or split up siya kasi nga tataas yung number of shares natin. Okay, so we have 10,000 kanina, okay, before the split. Ngayon, nung pagkatapos ng split, from 10, dahil gagawin natin siyang dalawa, okay, it becomes now 20,000 ordinary shares. Okay? So what will happen now to the par? So kanina yung par niya is 10 pesos. Ang mangyari po doon would be, okay, kabaliktaran nung nangyari sa shares. So kapag split up or share split ang nangyayari, okay, so yung number of outstanding or even issued shares will increase. Samantalang yung par value naman magdi-decrease. So itong 10 peso par na to, okay, i-divide natin siya by 2. Kung na-convert kanina ng 2 yun, ngayon i-divide naman natin ng 2 yung par. Okay, para maging 5 peso. Okay? Nagets? So what will happen, as you can see ha, tignan nyo yung before. 10,000 shares, 10, okay, that is equal to 100,000. Yun yung share capital. Okay, bago tayo nagkaroon ng share split. Okay, in-ignore ko na yung retained earnings, share premium kasi hindi naman siya nagagalaw eh. Even lahat naman talaga hindi nagagalaw. Ngayon, pagkatapos ng share split, yung 20,000 na converted or um, number of shares, okay, multiplied it with the 5 peso new par value, magiging 100,000 din siya. So as you can see, walang nangyari, walang nagbago doon sa share capital. Okay? So ulitin ko lang ha, ang share split or split up will, okay, increase the number of shares, but it will decrease the amount of par value of the share. Okay? Next naman, dito sa second bullet, okay, as you can see, currently the corporation parang parehas lang siya. Pero ito yung ano dyan, pagkaiba nila. The company effected 1-for-2 share split. So it will now show us a reverse share split. Okay? So again, the concept of reverse share split is that it has the number of shares currently which will decrease. So kung nag-decrease yung shares, okay, inverse yung relationship with the par, so yung par naman tataas. Okay? Mula sa 10,000 shares natin before the split, since dalawa nito ay magiging isa daw for after the share split. So it goes down now to 5,000 shares na lang. Okay? So after the share split, 5,000 shares na lang. And then yung par na 10 peso, okay, since reverse ito, it will increase naman. So times 2. Okay, kaya naging 20 pesos. Ito ulit yon, no? Kung dati 10,000 shares ka at 10 peso par, so your share capital is 100,000 after the share split, no? Yung 5,000 shares na yon, multiplied mo naman by the new par value, which is 20, okay, it will now become 100,000 pa rin. So see, same pa rin yung share capital, walang nabago. Okay? So just to have a recap, again, kapag share split or split up tayo, okay, bababa yung par, tataas yung shares, number of shares. Dito naman sa ating reverse share split, tataas yung par, bababa yung number of shares.